I think last night, all of you know, we spent a couple of hours from 10 to 12 talking about the shooting of the three Palestinian college students who are going to college here in America. It didn't make a lot of sense to us last night. I don't know if we can make any more sense of it today, but we have with us Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He's a criminologist at Tarleton State University in Texas, heads up their School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies. Dr. Del Carmen, welcome to Nightside.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Hope it's a little warmer down in Texas than it is in Boston tonight. On a very serious and somber note, we have these three young Palestinian students, 20-year-olds, who went to Burlington, Vermont to celebrate Thanksgiving with a relative of one of the students, and for some unknown reason, an individual who is now charged with three counts of attempted murder basically walked up to them, as far as we know, didn't say much, and shot them. One of them, I believe, is in fairly serious condition. Without getting into the medical specifics, this is a pretty ugly incident. As someone who's a criminologist and you've studied these sorts of crimes, how does someone get to the point, whether it's the defendant who now enjoys the presumption of innocence or some other person, how do you get to the point where you do something that drastic and that dramatic for no obvious reason?
That's a great question, Dan, because many of us, study this as part of our daily lives and try to explain what sometimes is called the unexplainable. And what we have learned over the years is that, especially in recent past, is that people are becoming radicalized. Some individuals are. They read the newspaper. Nowadays, they read social media. They talk to other people in blogs and various other outlets. And what comes up with them is their brain begins to sort of get, if you want to call it, create a new normal, create a new norm, a new standard. And they see themselves as defenders of whatever cause it is that they believe they're protecting. And as a result of that, they engage in serious crime sometimes. And I would venture to say that, as best as we know in this particular case, that's likely what happened here.
We had a horrific event up in the state of Maine, in Lewiston, Maine, in October, when a gunman went to two locations, a bowling alley and just a typical locations, and with weapons killed several people. Eventually, he took his own life. But in both of these cases, it seems to me anyone who would do this, I'm not a psychiatrist, nor do I play one on the radio, but it would seem to me that someone who would do something like this to total strangers, obviously different circumstances, I get that, are almost by definition nuts. I hate to use a medical term to a fellow doctor. I'm a lawyer, so I have a JD, but is it mental health, and are we somehow not identifying mental health quickly enough? I know that many of my callers believe that we closed mental health institutions in the 1980s and 90s in this country, and maybe did we make a mistake when we did that?
Those are great questions, right? But one of the things that I often say to people when they cite mental health reasons is that, if we really sort of take a thermometer or a measuring tape and try to figure out how many people in our society suffer from some form of mental illness, we would likely be surprised by the large number of people that do in one form or another. Sure. And so the real question is then, what triggers some of those individuals to simply engage in violent crimes? And I would submit to you that not everyone that is violent suffers from mental illness as well, right? It's just that for us, we try to always, if you want to call it, use mental illness as a possible explanation, because in our brain, in our mind, we cannot conceive that an individual would engage in such horrible acts of violence. And so we try to find, short answer is, you have to be quote unquote crazy in order to do that. There's no way you could do that and be sane. Well, some of these individuals are in fact, aware of what they're doing. They have been radicalized, and what it is that their ideology supersedes their morals.
The other thing that's interesting about it to me is that I look at this guy who's now charged up in Burlington, Vermont. I can't imagine what set him off. I can't imagine why he would do that. But I watched him in court briefly during the arraignment yesterday, and I thought to myself, if convicted, and again enjoys the presumption of innocence, but certainly it looks like a prima facie case. He's done for the rest of his life. I mean, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. Not only do you try to destroy someone else's life or lives, but you destroy your own life.
Right, and I think what you just outlined is the rationality of a sane, individual like yourself. I like to think, and myself, that we obviously evaluate the consequences of our actions, and we try to modify our behavior based on the outcome of what those consequences would in fact invite. But a lot of these folks that engage in these massive attacks and in some cases, take multiple lives out, what they do is they really become obscured with the idea that there is no, in other words, there is no ending in their mind where they win. What they want to be known for is that they stood ground and took a cause and created harm on others to bring attention to that cause or that ideology. And so there is
the irony. The irony is we're going to forget their names within a matter of weeks. Our combined attention span in this country, the name of some mass killer from 5 years ago, no one remembers that individual. I mean, it's not
right,
like
and
we
that's
keep
particularly
that we remember Tom Brady, the football quarterback, and we remember the great basketball and hockey and baseball players, and we remember presidents and all of that. But if that's what they're looking for, fame, it's fleeting at best.
Right, and so to your point, part of the reason is because sadly we have more of these shooters now than we have good athletes, right? And so people are oftentimes,
well, I don't know. I don't know I can go that far. There's a lot of good athletes in the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB, but as well as college sports. Dr. Del Carmen, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. It is it's an enigma wrapped in a conundrum. It's so difficult to put our fingers on it, but thank goodness that there are folks like you who are constantly looking at it and maybe come up with some sort of an answer at some point, because it's so random, it could affect any of us. Doctor, thank you so much tonight. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for having me.